Development and Chief Advancement Officer here at SBH. It's particularly important to me that this program happens tonight. Having lived through the challenging taking care of my dad, I think I have a really clear understanding of how important this night is in so many different ways. The first impression would be this is a perfect senior division program. It's taking care of our elderly parents and grandparents. Logically, it falls within the senior division. But then when you take a step back, you realize there's also very clearly a medical component. How do we care for the medical needs of our parents and grandparents in the most effective and caring and loving and impactful way? And then you take another step back and you think about the mental health challenges, not only of our parents and our grandparents, but us as caregivers and how difficult it could be to go through this process. And I think in there lies the secret of why SBH is SBH. There are many organizations that do incredible work, and we're blessed and lucky to have all of them. There's only one organization that I know of that can stand here at an event like this and say that we could cover at the onset all three aspects of this very challenging and difficult issue. And not only can we bring all three of those divisions to bear in any individual case, but having them work seamlessly together really provides a full, holistic, caring and loving way that we could take care of our parents and grandparents. Our goal here tonight is to share a tremendous amount of information with you. We are videoing the program, and you will be able to see it, and others will be able to see it starting tomorrow morning. I want to thank our incredible panel, who I'll introduce in just a few minutes, for giving up their time and their expertise and joining us this evening. We really very much appreciate it. I jokingly told our first speaker that I need to take him with me on the road. I was only joking a little bit. We're very, very blessed with incredible Rabbanim, but Rabbanim who are so involved in the day-to-day challenges that their congregants are facing is a very, very special thing. When he eats, sleeps, and breathes the challenges they're living as if they're his own, and when he could share his personal experience with his congregants, the impact is incredible. And they know that they are not alone, and that's a very, very special thing. We are privileged to have with us this evening a friend of SBH, an incredible asset and resource to the community, Rabbi David Haber.
Thank you. So I'm going to confess something before I start, and that is I walked in this evening very intimidated and honestly a little self-conscious. I'll tell you what, because I, like you, got this flyer. And if you look at this flyer, there's a lot of people with a lot of letters at the end of their name. So we have Dory, Salem, Esquire, that's ESQ, that's a fancy title, Toby, Weiss, MSOD, and Linda Benun, LCSW, and there's Charles Anteby, who is CAO, right? There's a lot of fancy letters. I don't have any fancy letters after my name, so I decided tonight I'm going to give myself some fancy letters, and those fancy letters are going to also be CAO. Now, Charles, I'm not taking your job. There is only one Charles Anteby in the world, but this acronym stands for Chief Admiration Officer. The amount of admiration that I have for SBH, I think could fill a book. I grew up as a child in Deal, New Jersey, hearing the name or the words or the letters SBH thousands of times a year from both of my parents. It ran through our home, it runs through our blood, and frankly, as of late, I can't imagine a community without SBH. I honestly can't. A couple of months ago, I had a serious situation in the shul. Very serious situation. It's a young kahal, young guys, young families, young wives, and there's a very, very serious situation. So serious was the case that three organizations told me, cut it loose. In fact, literally somebody told me, wipe your hands clean. There's nothing you could do to help this person. Literally. And then it was like 12 o'clock at night. We had a conference call with two people from SBH and David Beta. And I'll never forget, David's words were, he said, this is why SBH was created. He said, we will take the case and we'll see it through. They saved the man's life. Fact. He's going to have a normal, regular, healthy, wonderful life because of the intervention of SBH. So maybe it's not the size crowd that's necessary to give a rounding applause that we could hear across the world, but I think we all do a very, very much a round of applause for SBH and the work that they do. And I thank Mrs. Bridget Beda, who invited me here tonight, and who, of course, it's in memory of her father, and I think it goes without saying that that experience was the impetus for this event. And so, Bezat Hashem, any chizuk that's provided here should go and should be an aliyah for his neshama. Amen. Just a small observation before the real people begin that part. You know, a couple of years ago, when my daughter was 3 years old, she's a young little girl, Abus girl, and I was philosophizing with my wife at night. We're talking, and I said, you know, honey, my kids, my philosophy is going to be they could have anything they want. They could borrow my car, they could use my toys, they could use my shoes. Just the way I grew up, they could have everything. I said, save except for one item. I said, none of my children can use my toothbrush. I'm sorry, they could use everything else but my toothbrush. I said, okay, what do you want me to do about it? I said, listen, the blue toothbrush, don't let anybody touch the blue toothbrush. Okay, no problem. The next morning, at 5:30 in the morning, I'm groggy-eyed, I walk in to go and brush my teeth. There's a 3-year-old standing on a stool with a blue toothbrush in her mouth, going back and forth. Right then and there, I learned the lesson that the child-parent dynamic, Hashem will teach you very soon, very quickly, that pretty much everything you got is just going to go to your kids. There's going to be nothing left over. You and your children essentially are one. There's a slight learning curve, but it's not a very long learning curve, and ultimately you learn it fairly soon. What they don't teach you is they don't teach you the child-to-parent relationship as the years progress. They don't tell you what that involvement is. They don't tell you what that's going to take. They say, in the parashiyot, throughout the entire Torah, we see that the Jewish people are compared to stars. Literally, Hashem tells Abraham Avinu, come outside and look. He says, look at the kochavim, look at the stars. And he says, your people will be like the stars. The question that the rabbis ask is, what does that mean, like the stars? There's no other comparison that you can make. You want to say like the stars to be shiny? So use the term gold or diamonds. Yet for some reason, Hashem felt that the greatest analogy to use would be kochavim, would be stars. I'm getting accustomed to that song. It's a good one. The question is why? Why compare the Jewish people to stars? Now maybe you'll say because it's multitudes in the sky, but yet we're also compared to sand. So that can't be the only reason. Our rabbis give an interesting reason. They say like this, there's a midrash that tells us that when Hashem created the world, He created the sun and the moon the same size. And the midrash says that the moon complained to God. And the moon said to Hashem, he said, this doesn't make any sense. You can't have two luminaries in the sky that are the exact same size. One has to be larger than the other. And God said, that's right. You're right. And so Hashem took the moon and He made it smaller. And He put it in the sky. But the Midrash goes further. And it says at that time, Hashem created stars. Say our rabbis, you know why Hashem created stars? God created stars because Hashem said like this. You see, the moon is slightly diminished. And now that the moon is slightly diminished, It needs support. It needs care. And so God created stars to accompany and support the moon. Which means that we're compared to stars not because of the way they look. We're compared to stars because of the role that they serve. You want to know what it means to be a Jew? It means to be a caregiver. An evening of education and empowerment for caregivers. That is literally who we are. We could have been compared to anything. Gold, diamonds, sapphires, rubies, but we weren't. We were compared to stars specifically. Because not the shine that they have, but the role that a star serves. We here, this evening, are here because officially we want to learn about being a caregiver. I can tell you something from personal experience. It's not simple. I'm not a caregiver per se. I don't think I deserve that particular acronym. But my family, my siblings definitely do. And we've experienced this particular chapter in a very, very vivid and profound way. In fact, quite literally, everybody's second job today, or maybe equal to their first job, I mean, they're all rabbis, but equal to that job is being a caregiver. Every one of us. We have some sort of role and some sort of job. For us, I won't talk personally for my siblings, but it's not easy. First of all, there's a money component that sometimes gets in the way. You say insurance covers, then you call them up, no, you don't have the gold plan, you have the silver plus plan, you sit on the phone for 3 hours. There's an energy element. You get 6 o'clock in the morning. In certain cases, it's dialysis, it's MRIs, it's traveling back and forth. You go from this hospital to that hospital, wherever Nathan sends you that day, right? And then there's also a dynamic. There's a family dynamic. Who went? Why'd she go? Why didn't he go? Why didn't they go? He went away. How did he go away? How could they do that? How did they do that? They don't appreciate him. They don't appreciate her. They don't appreciate us. There's a family dynamic involved in this picture. There's also a time factor, the most valuable thing you have. And that time factor is used every single time you pay a visit, you're taking time from something else. Every single time you take one family member or the other family member, or father or mother, for one visit, it's hours, a husband, a wife, it could be days. These factors are not easy. But there's a mindset. What's the mindset that a person should have in mind? This is just my personal opinion. You can take it, you can leave it, but it's my opinion. My opinion is like this. A little while ago, about 3 years ago, I saw a man coming out of his house in a community. To say he's wealthy would be an understatement. He's worth a fortune of money. He could hire 20 aides around the clock if he wanted and not bat an eyelash, not exaggerating. Yet I saw him coming out of his house wearing latex gloves and carrying a shopping bag with a knot at the top. Now, I have little children. I know what a shopping bag with a knot at the top means. Now, this man does not have little children. So I cracked a joke to him like, you know, you're working overtime as a grandfather to have you changing diapers now? And then he looked at me and he says, no. This is something different. He said, what I'm holding here, this is my zechuyot. I'm holding my merits in this bag. I didn't understand him, and then I watched him go to the side of his house, put it in the trash can, and take off his gloves. And I understood that inside the house he had an ailing father. And then I understood what the comment was. But very, very frankly, I didn't understand what he meant. This is my zechuyot. What does that mean? This is your merits in this bag. What are you talking about? Get somebody, hire somebody. Have somebody take care of this. What are you doing this for? But there's a profound lesson from that. And this is what, in my opinion, what we should keep in mind. We know how big of a deal Kibud Av Va'em is. But I think most of us, myself included, we underestimate it. You see, in the story of Yaakov and Esav, the story tells us in the parasha, the story tells us that Yaakov was very afraid of Esav. Very afraid. You're talking about Yaakov Avinu, one of the holiest men to ever live on the planet. A direct relationship with God. He literally is one of the 3 most important people ever. How could it be that he was afraid of his brother Esav? Didn't he have enough going for him that God would be on his side? It seems fairly obvious that Hashem would be on his side. The Jewish people would come from this man. You got to tell me that Yaakov Avinu didn't have the merits to hold up against Esav? Say the Chachamim, you know what he was afraid of? Esav excelled in the midah of kibud avaim. Esav excelled in the midah of taking care of his father. And Yaakov was so afraid that that merit would combat all of the merits that he had. Think of that for just a second. When a person is taking care of their parent, we think that we're paying back. We think that, you know what we're doing? We're giving up of ourselves because we owe them a debt of gratitude. That's true. And maybe it's not only parents that we're describing. Maybe it's a spouse. But ultimately, think about it for just a second. When you're taking care of a father or a mother, which is happening across the community today, what's happening is the greatest merit that a person could garner is happening at that very moment. Regardless of what it is that they're doing. It could be a trip from Brooklyn to the city. It could be a trip from here to Westchester. It could be just sitting with them reading a book. It could be watching their favorite TV show. It could be cracking jokes that you've told 1,000 times just to get a chuckle out of your parent or out of your loved one. It could be something a little bit deeper, something a little bit more difficult, something a little bit more costly. But at that very moment, you're racking up as great a merits as a person could possibly get. It's an incredible opportunity. Our rabbis tell us that Hashem created mitzvot specifically so that we would have merits. That's the reason. That's the reason He gave it to us. He wants us to have merits. And there, all of us in this room, first of all, by being here, you have merits. By being a person of the thousands who should be here, by being a person who cares enough about the person that they're taking care of to be here, to listen, to absorb, and to internalize, already you're earning points. I think that's a critical thing that we all, myself included, should keep in mind. I'll tell you something in closing. I remember about a year ago, my father was in Cornell. It was a year ago? My father was in Cornell. And when my father was in Cornell, it was very taxing because he had to be in that hospital. And yet at the same time, they had very, very strict guidelines for visitation. And we all collectively didn't want to leave my mother alone. We didn't. We didn't want to leave my mother alone. And frankly, in a hospital today, it's probably not even a smart thing to do to leave anybody alone. And so we didn't feel comfortable. That night I was there. We had brought my father to the hospital. And I was there. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. And basically my siblings came out that somebody's got to stay. Now I was there in the building already at the time. And, guilty as charged, they didn't want me in the building anymore, the hospital. But I'm not leaving my mother. In fact, I called a great rabbi and I said, here's the scenario. Is it okay to stay in the hospital even though technically they don't want? He said, given what the scenario is, he told me, figure it out. So I said, okay, I have to figure it out. I went somewhere in the hospital. I said, where am I going to stay? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Where am I going to go? I'm walking around the entire hospital. I can't find a bench that's out of eye shot. Finally, I went to the chesed room. I said, all right, I'll rummage around here for 4 hours and I'll figure it out the next morning. Promise, I walk into the hospital. I walk into the chesed room. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm absolutely exhausted. There's a swivel chair, 4 legs, 3 wheels. True story. 4 legs, 3 wheels. And it's Thursday night. Now, I love the people who take care of chesed 24/7. But it's not yebra and it's not exactly kibbeh in the warmer. It was chulent and it was kugel. So there I am in this small room at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's me, chulent, and kugel in this small room and it's heating up. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to figure out how am I going to sleep here. Then the fridge turns on and it's making all sorts of whirring sounds. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm exhausted. I'm gone. I smell like, I don't know, a stiebel. I smell terrible. And I'm sitting there and I said, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Who cares if I'm even here? What role am I even serving? My mother barely knows that I'm here. My father's out. What's the difference? Let me go home. Who cares if I'm here? Here's the difference that it makes. The difference that it makes is the following. The word v'natanu, to give, is a palindrome. It goes both ways. You can spell it and you can read it both ways. And that's what we're doing. When we think we're giving, we're actually taking. When we think we're giving and we're supporting and we're taking care of them, we're gaining. We're gaining merits, We're gaining the opportunity to build in this world something up there. We're gaining the opportunity to get closer to our loved one. But most importantly, in my opinion, we're gaining the opportunity to be the essence of who we are. Kochavim, stars. To scale the mitzvot to all of you, and Hashem should bless all of us and all of our loved ones with a full and complete refuah shelema.
Before I turn the mic over to our distinguished MC this evening, I'd like to take a moment and just introduce our panel. Mr. Nathan Hoffman, who should be on everybody's speed dial if he's not already. He is the guardian angel for all of us. We are blessed for the work that he does. He's a trustee of Mount Sinai Health System and Chaim Medical Sephardic Division. Toby Weiss, who's the Assistant Vice President of Cultural Diversity at Menorah Rehab Center. A very dear and old friend, Mr. Dory Salem, a founding partner at the firm of Salem, Shore, and Saperstein, and a founder of SBH, who has dedicated her life to helping others. And really, the fruits of what SBH today are a direct result of the work that she's done over her entire life. Ms. Linda Benun, who is a licensed social worker. Sometimes when things match up perfectly, you know that they're really very clearly a blessing. That is the case for our MC and his family this evening. They are the sponsors of our senior division. It's a perfect match. They're sponsors in honor and in memory of my aunt and uncle, Louis Alava Shalom, I'm sorry, and Lorraine Shamie, who have given to the community so much for so many years. But more than that, he's passionate about everybody in our community and what their needs are. And there are many people who care about the community. And then there are people that make things happen and get them done. We are very lucky to have, as the sponsor of our senior division and as our MC for the program this evening, my dear friend, Mr. Joe Shamie.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for that warm introduction. So, Rabbi, my initials, which are not noted in here, are AH, Adrian's husband. That precedes me in every way, and she is my everything. I got a little emotional earlier, and I think about this a lot. Think about the founders of our community who came over here in the early 1900s. They had nothing, zero. They had to worry about their next meal. But something that they prioritized more than anything else was the future of the community. Not their children, not just their children, not just their grandchildren, but our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I could go on and on and on. They were like Avraham Avinu, not necessarily worrying about the immediate, but worrying about the far future. Amazing individuals. They built yeshivas, they built even simple things, I call it simple, but mikvehs. They, from the center, I could go on and on, all the things that they did and they built and all. But Kol Chayim in those days was really more about family and community, because they were really one giant family, and everybody took care of each other. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, had a grocery store. People, millionaires today, tell me that their family survived because of his grocery store. He didn't have anything, but he was able to help feed them. Today, we have SBH. And SBH is not an institution, not an organization. It is our family. It is built by our relatives, our friends, our family, our people that care, people that have a heart for all of us, people that take care of us. And we're just so fortunate to have all, I don't want to name all the names because I'm going to miss people, but everybody in this room that takes care, that does take care of it, we really need a round of applause for that. One more thing I want to say, as the rabbi pointed out, about taking care of our parents. Our parents, our grandparents lived or live for our very existence. It doesn't matter how old they are, what they are, whether they be in their 80s or 90s. They're worried about us. They're worried about our future. They're worried about what's happening. And there's times when we have to sit there and take care of our heroes, our mentors, people that built and made us all together. So it's an important night, and God bless each one of you for the hard work that you have ahead of you, taking care of them. So we have a great lineup of people to help us with this, and the first person is Nathan Hoffman. This is your 911 call. A minute after you call 911, you call Nathan. Nathan is the one that will help you guide through all the challenges of the hospital, get you the appointments, do things for you, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nathan.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you to the entire committee at SBH for organizing an event that I think inevitably is going to make a potentially unpleasant experience a little bit more tolerable. And what we learned tonight, I believe, could potentially save a life. Tonight's an evening for caregivers. And what I think most of us should ask ourselves is, when do you become a caregiver? When does that sort of happen in our lives? What we all have to understand is that unfortunately many people wait too long to recognize that fact. That at some point they're going to have to care for somebody facing a medical challenge. And in today's day and age, with the advancement of technology and the sophistication of the medical system, the time is now to prepare. So our goal tonight is for all of you to walk out of this room with a much better understanding of what it means to care for your loved one and how to minimize risk. And I think that's the key. Minimizing risk when you're taking care of your loved one facing a medical challenge. So what kind of information do you need to be prepared? What is it that you have to understand in advance? What's this all about? So as most of you already know, I spend a lot of my time, aside from running my business, volunteering to help people navigate through medical challenges. And it's a real zechut to be able to do that. I thank Hashem for that every day. And I think I have a few short steps for you that'll give you a foundation, at least, for getting yourself prepared for this great responsibility. I put them into 3 buckets. One is preparation, the other one is maintenance, and the other one is responding to an emergency. And I'm going to talk about all 3 tonight. So let's talk about preparation. The first thing you have to do to prepare for being a caregiver for your loved one is to have access to the virtual medical source, which is called MyChart. Everybody knows what MyChart. If you don't know what MyChart is, I think it's important for you to get accustomed to it. To get that login and password is a task in and of itself. I actually, in advance of making this speech, I called my mother 2 weeks ago, and I asked her for her login and password first. She said, "Is something wrong? What's the matter?" I said, "No, Mom, nothing's the matter. I got the login and password. First there were capitals missing, but we got it." But it's important to have a login and password and make sure that it works. And of course, once you log in, you'll be able to see everything, literally everything. From the type of medications your loved one is taking, to the most recent scans that they have. And I think it's really, really important to peruse it, look at it, and maybe even save some screenshots, just in case you may need it in the future. And I'm going to talk about that obviously later on, but you know, God forbid, we should never need it, but you may need it. The second thing that I think we should talk about with regards to preparation is understanding the insurance your loved one has. And I know we're going to be talking about that a lot tonight. Insurance is a complicated category, and sometimes you make these assumptions that you could see any doctor, and unfortunately you get to learn really quick that you can't. So getting educated on what type of insurance your loved one has is really, really important. And last but not least, you have to know the names of the doctors that your loved one sees. I know that sounds simple, but it's not so simple. And when you get asked that question, especially if it's an urgent matter, you start to really get nervous and say, "I'm not sure, I don't know who it is." You have to know that like the back of your hand. This is my loved one's doctor. This is how often she sees them. And you have to feel confident that that doctor is giving your loved one great care. And most importantly, once you select a doctor, you're selecting, in essence, a hospital. Most doctors are affiliated with a hospital. So if, God forbid, a million times, if a hospital is needed, You're going to want to rely on your doctor to facilitate care in the hospital that he's affiliated with. He can make phone calls on your behalf. So it's a package deal, and it's important to understand how critical being part of a big hospital system is. The next part is maintenance. It's not a get it and forget it system. You don't just get all this information and say, I got it, it's on the list, I saved it on my computer. It doesn't work that way. You have to have it. You have to make sure your loved one is going to see doctors frequently, making sure that they're even taking the medication that they're supposed to be taking. I've had phone calls before where I've asked people, is your father taking his medicine? I'm not sure. I don't know. It's important. Why go through all the trouble of doing that all prep work and then afterwards finding out that your loved one is not taking the medication they're supposed to be getting, or not taking the scheduled scans they're supposed to be getting? So all that maintenance is critical in making sure that you're successful as a caregiver. And even keeping a calendar on yourself, when scans are supposed to happen, when doctor's appointments are supposed to happen. And there might be some instances where you actually have to go to appointments with your loved one to meet the doctor. Maybe they're not capable of asking the appropriate questions. So it's a responsibility, there's no question about it, but it definitely pays off, especially, God forbid, when we're dealing with an emergency. Now, I don't know about you, but anytime I think about the word emergency, I think about Hatzalah. And I think it's important to recognize and give them a round of applause for the hard work that they do for our community. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're just simply amazing. We wouldn't be where we are today without them. So if, God forbid, we're in a hospital, there's so much that goes through your mind and you really can't think. And it's happened to a lot of people. You can't think straight. You can't really focus on what's happening. You're dealing with an emergency. You're in an ambulance. You're in a hospital. And this is when everything that you did before paid off. You have all that information at your fingertips. A doctor in the emergency room, that's not your loved one's doctor. They start asking you questions. What medications does he take? Right here. When was the last time they had a colonoscopy? Right here. Who's the doctor? Here it is. It's right on your phone. You have it. It cuts down the amount of time in the emergency so much that whatever emergency they're dealing with could be dealt with so much quicker. The other point that I think is important to note is managing expectations. Everybody doesn't like surprises. You go into an emergency room, it's full of surprises. What's happening today is there is a nursing shortage in our hospital systems across the country. It's inundating our emergency rooms. The emergency rooms after COVID are busier than they ever were. So what that does is, on average, for a patient to get out of an emergency room is a minimum of 24 to 36 hours in the emergency room. It starts putting you in a little bit of a stressful situation, but if you know that in advance, you're sort of mentally ready for it. And I think it's so critical to be ready for something like that. Why? Because the key of any hospital visit is to focus 100% of your attention on medical care. Medical care. Yes, there are times when I get a call, my father's in the hallway. My father's jammed. Please help me. Is there a doctor there? Did a doctor see you? Did they do blood work yet? Those are my first questions. And there's no question about it. Being in a room is important, especially for the elderly. Let's face it, there's so much that goes on in the emergency room. But what takes priority 100% of the time is medical care. I also think it's important to address one question. I get it all the time, believe it or not. It might not be for this crowd, is, should I stay? Should I stay? You think I should stay? Should I go to the hospital? You think I should be at the hospital? You know, again, because of what's going on and the shortages of our medical personnel in the hospital system, it's so critical to be there. For something as small as a drink of water that your loved one may need, or something as important as something beeping for no reason that you don't know what it is. These are the things that are so critical to being next to your loved one as much as physically possible. I don't know if staying in the chesed room with a pot of cholent counts, but I think it does the trick, Rabbi. And, you know I was asked to speak about the hospital systems, and I think it's important to note that, thank God, we don't live in Idaho in a potato field. We have access to the best hospitals in the world right through that tunnel. And, every hospital serves a purpose, but to know that we have access to the most amazing hospital systems, that people fly in from all over the world to come see the doctors that, Baruch Hashem, we're close to, is a real privilege and so important to make sure that we could utilize that to the fullest. I'd like to end off by saying, which I know everybody's been speaking about, we live in the best community in the world.
Amen.
We really do. And part of the reason why, and I've learned that over the past 3 or 4 years, is really attributed to the doctors in our community. I could attest, and some of them are in the crowd tonight, they never stop working for our community, and they deserve a round of applause. So I hope the information that I gave you tonight, it all comes from experience, it comes from my heart. Like I said, it's a real zechut to be able to work for our community and volunteer my time. But I see it firsthand, and these are just some of the small things that if you do it, it really, really will help. So thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Only a few years ago, Nathan was, a husband, a father, a son, a businessman. And little did he know how his life would turn on him, and he would become really Superman for the community. And thank you so much, Nathan. God bless you. You all are amazing, and I am serious. He is our 911, sorry, but you are our 911 call for so many causes, and Hashem should give you success always. Our next speaker is Toby Weiss. I just had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with her. She creates a halachit, it's interesting, a halachit pathway for our loved ones, between them and whatever care they're going to be getting from outside, from non-family members. It's more complicated than you think, but she helps bridge that divide. She helps make it happen, and God bless her. Let's listen to her now.
I promise I'm not sick. This is the aftermath of being sick 2 weeks ago, so if I hack a little bit, please understand it's just the aftermath. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not actually going to speak to you tonight about what I do for a living with patients. I actually work for MJHS, Metropolitan Jewish Health System, for the hospice and the palliative care program. But what I am going to speak to you about is what you can do. I want to empower you, all of you here, to think ahead, to think about what you have control over, because we only have control over what we have control over, and everything else is Yad Hashem. And so I'm going to be talking to you about the concept of advanced care planning, which is having conversations early upstream, as opposed to in an emergency situation, in the emergency room, when somebody's having a serious issue. People ask, when is the right time to do advanced care planning? And let me be clear. Advanced care planning is a conversation. Advanced directives are legal documents. Okay? And in fact, I hope you picked up downstairs, I brought materials for you to take home. And one of them is a wallet-size healthcare proxy card. Did you see this down there? I want everyone to take this healthcare proxy card and fill it out. And the importance behind this is incredible. God forbid, somebody walks across the street and falls, and they faint. What do? We call Hatzalah, or 911. But then what do? We look in their wallet to see who they are. If you have this wallet-size healthcare proxy card, mamash, in your wallet, somebody's going to open it and know who to call on your behalf. Take this card, fill it out, stick it in your wallet. The other material that I brought is this document, which I'm going to talk about. This is something called the 5 Wishes. This is a living will. What I love about this document is that it's very, very simple language, very simple English. The 5 questions that this focuses on are: 1, the person I want to make care decisions for me when I can't. The 2nd, the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. The 3rd, how comfortable I want to be. The 4th, how I want people to treat me. And the 5th, which is the reason that I love this document more than any of the other wishes, is what I want my loved ones to know. We just passed Zayin Adar the other day, Sunday, right? Yaakov Avinu, he didn't want to die right away. He wanted to remain alive so that his children could gather around him and he could give them blessings and tell them his hopes for them, his wishes for them. This builds into the document what I consider to be kind of like a tzava'a, an ethical will. I'm not going to go into it in depth now because you're going to take them home. But what I want you to understand is that these conversations, advanced care planning, planning for your future, should be done when you're well enough to be able to think through what's important to you. If you can't have the conversation with yourself, there ain't no way you're going to be able to share that information with the people who are important to you, with your loved ones. It's not a one and done. It's not something that you sit down and you do like that. You sit down, you look at it, you think through it, you ponder it, you might change some of the things. It doesn't happen right away. But it's something to sit down on a couch with a cup of coffee or tea or a glass of wine, read through it, think through it, go back to it. But once you have the information in your mind and you think through the things that are important to you and you document it, then you're able to bring together your loved ones, your close circle, and then you're able to share with them what your wishes are, what you want. What's the beauty behind doing that? Everyone here, I imagine, is a caregiver, has been a caregiver, or will be a caregiver. I don't have parents anymore. I was the primary caregiver for my mom. My father was ill for as long as I could remember, and he's gone for many, 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 many years. No matter how much you give of yourself to the people that you love most, if you don't know what their wishes are and what they want, there's a piece of you that later wonders, is that what mommy really wanted? Did I do everything that I could have done? You don't have to go there. You need to be present, but you need to share what's important to you. You know, I had an interesting experience last Thursday night. I went to a program in my community. I live in Queens. And they had a program with 3 chayalim that came to speak about their experience, where they were when they were deployed to Gaza during the war. Actually, one went up north. He was sent up north. 2 of them went down south. And they spoke about the mood, the vibe in the country, and how people knew something was going to happen. One of the chayalim was also a musician. And when he got the text message to come, he was a young man, he kissed his wife and his 3 children, and he had no idea whether or not he was going to ever see them again. And he was sent up to Lebanon, to the northern part of Israel. He was there for a month and didn't shower, didn't have change of clothes, didn't have food, very little food, because everything going to Israel is going down south. So they had minimal stuff up there. He was driving in his Jeep, and he pulled over on the side, and he wrote a song. And the name of the song is Ani Od Chai, I'm Still Alive. And it made me realize when he said that, first of all, it's putting chills down my spine now, but it made me realize how little power we have, and that everything is in Yad Hashem, everything. So for us to be able to actually have control over something which will prove valuable to our families, to our loved ones, and to us, that's what this is about. That's what advanced care planning is. I can't impress upon you enough the imperative to sit and think about it, but then the next question comes along. So let's say you do what I'm suggesting that you do. The next part of the puzzle is, how do you share the information with your family? The issue of transparency is very, very important. You need to have everyone present so that there's clarity about what you say, and that there's no machloket later when people say, one sibling will say, well, I'm not doing this, Mom, I can't do that. It's not about what you want, it's about what your loved ones want. You're going to speak about sibling dynamics. The sibling dynamics can get very dicey. This is one way to keep shalom in the house and to ensure that what you're doing is definitely in alignment with the values, the lived experiences, and the wishes of your loved ones. I want to see if there's anything else. How do you bring people together? How do you get them all together in the same room? It's not so simple. There's a lot of reasons that people avoid these conversations. They worry. They're worrying about upsetting another person in the family. They're scared to confront the issues. What you need to do is kind of like what I said before with how to go through this document. Just sit on a couch with a cup of tea and think through it. You got to set the stage. You have to create a situation where everybody's coming. I did that with my brother who passed away in Israel 4.5 years ago. My family said to me, my brothers and family live in Israel, and they said, Eli gave up. I said, I don't believe it. No, not Eli. Eli wouldn't give up. I said, I'm coming. I emailed this document. I brought the hard copies with me. We sat together, the whole family, Motzei Shabbat. We went through all of it together. And you know what we learned at the end of that session that I had with them, which was 2.5 hours long? Eli wanted to be alive and present as long as he was cognitively aware of who was there. My sister-in-law, his wife, said, take me out back and shoot me. My other brother said, not for me, I'm out of here. My nephew and my niece all said, we need to speak to our Rav. But the point is, everybody was there, and it was crystal clear by asking the questions and discussing it, what was important to him. What's important to him might not be important to me. What you want might not be what somebody else in your family wants. But you have an obligation to ease the passage for them if they're going to be caring for you. We always worry about being a burden, right? That's the thing with caregiving. You don't want to burden your loved ones. This unburdens them. This lets them feel that they're doing what they need to do because you guided them. So again, I'm gonna end. I just want to encourage all of you, please take this seriously. You should be empowered to do this, and then bring your family together and empower them. So thank you for inviting me.
I met Toby a few minutes ago, and I could feel how much she cares, and her heart and her soul is in helping all of us. And God bless you for all that you do. Not easy being a caregiver. Not easy being the sons and daughters of great parents and grandparents. It's not easy, but we have to do it, and that's what we look for, to help them. Our next speaker will help us deal with a lot of the legal aspects, everything from the living will, estate planning, power of attorney, health proxy, and we're very fortunate to have Dory Salem come up as our next speaker.
How is everyone doing tonight? It's really an honor to be here on behalf of SBH. To me, it's one of the oldest organizations in our community that still exists, and it keeps getting larger and larger by the minute. It's unbelievable, and everything that they do, it's just insurmountable in terms of what we could say. So from care planning, which is very important in speaking with your loved ones about what their wishes are and how we would implement those wishes, we have to talk about the advance directives, which are the actual documents that we can put in place from a legal standpoint to actually put those wishes into play, right? So I can sit here and talk about elder law and estate planning, asset preservation, Medicare, Medicaid, trusts. I'll be here for 2 hours. So really, I'm just giving you a little snippet, trying to give you just an idea in terms of the advanced directive aspect. And hopefully that will at least start the process of your thoughts to be able to then speak to whoever you go for planning, for legal advice, to get the rest of the information needed to actually move things forward. So the 3 documents that I typically put into play that I think is the basic foundation for every individual is a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, and a last will and testament. We do discuss the idea of living will. We also discuss the idea of a living trust. People get them confused. People think the word living means that they're all interconnected, but the living will and the living trust are actually 2 different documents, and they do 2 different things. So to talk about the power of attorney, you have to understand a lot of how things work. And to give an example, I'll use myself, it's just always easier. If I have a bank account and it's in my name, the only person that's allowed to access that account is me. No one else has permission to access my account. I could be married for 50, 60, 70 years. My spouse has no right. I can have 10 children. None of the children have the right to access my assets. Even if there's a beneficiary that's listed, oh, I put them as beneficiary. Guess what? You actually have to pass away in order to have access. A beneficiary has no access during lifetime, right? So the power of attorney becomes the most powerful and the most essential document to have in place for an individual. Now, the word attorney doesn't mean lawyer, right? You don't want me to be your agent and handle all your affairs, right? The word attorney actually means agent. You're appointing your agent to act on your behalf. That agent can be a spouse, can be a child, can be a neighbor, can be a cousin. It could be whoever you wish to designate to that authority. So it's important to always think about and choose the right people in that role, because if you don't put the right people in that role, there is situations where there could be abuse and there could be fraud. So it's very important, because the power of attorney can simply pay me my electric bill, but can also sell my house and give away my money. So depending on how you draw up the power of attorney and what aspects you put in the power of attorney become very important. The power of attorney is only good during my lifetime. So whoever I put as an agent only has that authority while I'm alive. If something happens to me, if I pass away, that authority ceases on death. So it's only good during my lifetime, and it has to be in writing. I can't just point to someone and say, you act as my agent, do it, you're my child, take care of it. I know you're going to do it, just take care of it. It doesn't work that way. From a legal aspect, if you go into a bank, the first question they're going to ask you is, do you have the legal document? Where's your power of attorney? Otherwise, we can't talk to you. Power of attorney deals with financial. So now we switch to medical. The healthcare proxy is a document, and the word proxy again means agent, to appoint someone to handle my medical affairs. Now, every state has different rules. New York has certain rules, New Jersey has certain rules, so depending on where you are, you may want to look into exactly what you need. In New York, we only have a healthcare proxy law. The statute only requires healthcare proxy. So we appoint someone to make medical decisions on our behalf. Typically in my practice, I try to keep it to one person, one family member. Doctors don't want to deal with multiple people. You don't want to have a situation where you have multiple people having different decisions and trying to figure out, and I'm sure a lot of the people in the panel can testify that when you have multiple people as healthcare proxy, it becomes problematic. So we try to keep it as one person. Now you can do someone is number one, someone number two, contingent, someone number three, but try to keep it to just one person to make medical decisions. And you hope that the people that are involved are going to speak to the rest of the family. The person that's in charge is going to make a decision based on the collective, not just a single decision. But the idea is that if you appoint someone to make the decision, and there is any conflict, that person is the one that's going to be the deciding factor as to what's going to happen. Now, there is this idea of a living will, which you have a document. But under New York law, we don't have a statute regarding a living will. The definition of a living will is the instruction of a person providing what would happen in the event that they become incapacitated to the point that there's no chance of survival, and they can decide whether they want certain care or not. Now, the living will is a directive. You're not appointing anyone, you're not putting anyone in play, you're just giving instructions to who we don't know. So by law, the way that it works is that it comes in as evidence in court. So if we go to court, and if we get to a situation where we're actually having decisions of deciding who's going to make what decision, and am I going to do a DNR, not do not resuscitate, do not intubate, it will come in as evidence, but it has no legal bearing in terms of an advance directive. It's part of a package that we do when we do advance directives, but the main document is the healthcare proxy. If someone is at the situation where they're no longer able to understand what's going on, and it's getting to the point where we know it's coming closer to the end, there is something called the DNR, which is a do not resuscitate, or DNI, which is do not intubate. Now those documents are only issued in a hospital setting. They are not put together in a community setting. So if you go to a hospital, they will provide you that choice if you have to make those choices, and they're tough choices. I hope no one ever has to make those kind of choices. But if you come home, we do have a document called MOLST, M-O-L-S-T, which is a medical directive. In New Jersey, they call it POLST, P-O-L-S-T, which is physician directed. It is a document that must be filled out by your doctor. It's not a document that you fill out, but it is a directive that will allow so that if you do call Hatzalah, or if anyone calls 911, it will indicate, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be intubated? And they will follow those rules. Typically, those documents are put on the refrigerator, and the first thing that Hatzalah comes is they walk in to look for those documents to see if they're in place. Now, they're important to have, and they're important to be as part of the discussion. And if you do decide to put it into play, it's something that's going to be out there for everyone to know, to make sure that your wishes will actually be granted if you come home. The problem with that document is that it's only good for 90 days. Every 90 days, the doctor has to reset that document, or at least has to indicate that they reviewed it, the situation is still the same, and we still want the same wishes, right? So power of attorney deals with finances, healthcare proxy deals with medical during my lifetime. If and when someone passes away, we have this document called the last will and testament. A lot of misconceptions involved in that document. People think, okay, I'm going to write a will, I'm going to put in there all my wishes, what happens when I pass away, and I want my assets to be divided in certain situations. The problem is that the will itself does not control assets. The will itself is only instructions that are given to a court. A will has to be presented to a court when someone passes away. I have to go through something called probate. There is an estate proceeding that needs to be done. And the estate assets, or assets that have become part of the estate, are only assets that have no instruction. So if I have a bank account and it's joint with my wife, guess what? That money goes automatically to my wife. If I have an account and I have my son as the beneficiary, my son will get that money automatically. But if there's something that's just in my name, I own a house, it's just in my name, or I owned it jointly with my spouse passed away, now it's in my name alone, it's my house, my children are not connected to it, no one else has any control over that asset, and that would have to go through some kind of process in order to be given to my family. The will acts as the instructions. if I don't have a will, the law actually sets up a default of how things are supposed to pass. One of the misconceptions that people have is everything goes to the state. That's not true. Everything goes to family, spouse, children, parents, the children of parents, brothers and sisters, all the way till we get to first cousins. Only after first cousins does New York State become your beneficiary. So if you have no family members, then you have to worry. Thank God in our community, most of the time, we don't have to worry about those things. The last thing I want to talk about is the living trust, and try to remove a lot of the misconceptions that are around the living trust. Because people think this term trust has some magic, and that these trusts are these potions that you stick it in, you put your assets in there, no one can touch it, it's protected completely from any creditors, my children will have it for the rest of their lives, taxes can't be touched. It's not true. It's simply not true. The trust is a tool. It's a tool that we use in terms of planning, and it's typically, what it is it's creating an entity, it's creating a company. Just like you create an LLC or you create a corporation, you create a trust. And so this trust is now an entity, and once I create the entity, if I don't put anything into this trust, it's a shell, it's empty. And if I don't put anything into it, it can't control anything. So for the trust to work, if I buy my house, and I take my house, and it's in my name alone, it goes through my will. But if I transfer it to the trust, and now the trust owns it, because the trust is the owner of the asset, the trust now controls what happens to that asset. I put it into that company, right? If something happens to me while I'm alive, all the instructions are inside the trust. If something happens to me when I pass away, all the instructions are inside the trust. Now, I can categorize trusts in two ways: revocable and irrevocable. Another misconception that people have: revocable means change, irrevocable means can't change. No, you can change trusts, always. A revocable trust is exactly what it means: to revoke, to take back. If I take my house and put it into a trust, and I want to now take it out of the trust, it's a revocable trust. Because I have the right to take it back and it's now my asset, it's still my money. Irrevocable means that once I put it in, I can't take it back. Because I can't take it back, therefore it's no longer connected to me, and because I have nothing in my name, it's protected. But the trust is not the magic. The magic is taking it out of my name. So if I take my house and I give it to my children, what do I have in my name? Nothing. Did I protect my assets in that scenario? Absolutely. The problem is, as much as I love my children, I'm not ready to give them my house yet. I still want to live in it. I still want to use it. I still want to get benefits from it. There are tax benefits as well. I mean, again, I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg in all of this information, just to give you an idea. But the irrevocable trust is a tool that we use to protect the assets by giving it to the trust, setting up terms in this document in terms of how I want it to be controlled, and only after I pass away does it go to my kids, right? So it's a good tool that we use to protect assets, specifically when we talk about Medicaid, because if I put it into an irrevocable trust, and if all the terms in the trust are set up the right way, and it's not my money, and if I need Medicaid, or if I want to apply for Medicaid, I can get it as long as it's not in my name. Now, there are some rules where there's this 60-month look back and 5-year look back. All of this, you should really speak to your own legal advisors in figuring out what is the best case scenario for you specifically. I mean, I am honored and privileged to be partners with Bikor Cholim. I work a lot with the senior division. I get calls at least once a month to 3 times a month, depending on what's going on in terms of different questions and concerns. They have a great division that's regarding entitlements, and if you ever have any questions about how to get Medicaid, what entitlements can I get SNAP, which is food stamps, how do I qualify, you can call your legal advisor, but Bikor Cholim also has this wonderful set of people that know all of these things that we work together on all the time. And I just want to leave you with just one last thought. I'm sure you've heard the saying that one mother can take care of 10 children. But 10 children can't take care of one mother. However, if you sprinkle in the support that SBH provides, the support that the panelists have to provide, and the support that the caregivers can actually mix together, I think you get rid of that stigma of 10 children can't take care of one parent. Thank you.
Wow! Holy cow! You're hired! I spent $200,000 on other trust lawyers and all that. They're all fired tomorrow morning. It's over. But I have one very, very important question for you. In about, I think it's about 2 hours, I'm going to be hitting the lotto. I need to know what to do.
Hire me as your lawyer.
Phenomenal, really priceless information. And if you look on your cards, there's email addresses to, not their direct email address, but SBH's email addresses, where you can ask questions, set up appointments, and get more. But really a wealth of information beyond imagination. And really thank God. God bless you. Thank you. You know, our next guest is a very good friend of the family's. Her family is just known for chesed, community involvement, doing everything possible. And her job tonight is helping us navigate siblings, the dynamics of a sibling and avoiding family conflict. So please help us.
Linda Brennan, sorry, excuse me, I didn't say your name.
They know me, I think. Hi, everyone. I have to say, first of all, that I'm so honored to be here as a founder of Bikor Chalim. It's 50 years ago that we started it, and it's really overwhelming to be here now and still be part of it, and I love it so much. So thank you for asking me to be here. So caregiving and sibling dynamics. So I want to just tell you that I think the more siblings you have, the greater the blessing. But at the same time, the greater the challenges. The better siblings get along, the better the care will be for your parents. I did a lot of research. I looked all over for information to help me give over to you. And I'm going to tell you that everything I found on the internet was nothing to do with what we have here. We belong to the Syrian community. Nothing, any information that I found had anything to do with what we care about our parents and our families. It's just so unique and so wonderful. They talk about families that live distance and who lives closest, and I'm like, what are they talking about? We all live right near each other. We all are on top of each other, and that's how we want it and that's how we like it. It's a bond that is unbreakable. Caring for aging parents is not just a responsibility, it's an emotional journey. And we're going to talk about the emotional part of this caregiving. Are you mentally prepared for the challenges? Because we need to be. They're not easy. So I'm going to give you some useful tips and some strategies to help you along this journey. Caring for parents is a shared responsibility. So try to operate as a team, all family members. And I was thinking about it, someone just said, are you going to talk about sister-in-laws and brothers-in-law? Yes. They're all part of it. They're all part of it. Whoever can put some part into it and help out, great. Great. I think I was like one of the main caregivers for my mother-in-law, and I love every minute that she was with us. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So try and operate as a team. Use everyone's strength. In some families, you are very lucky if you have a person who is a medical referral. Just happens to be. Or in some families, you might have someone who is a nutritionist. Not saying, it could be your family. Some families have social workers. Some people have bakers. Some people love to drive. Some people love to go to the doctors. Use those strengths. Some people are financial advisors. They understand the money aspects. Some people understand different parts of what's going on. Everyone should be part of a meeting. Everyone should get together and talk about what's going on. And start the meetings with thanking the people who are doing things. Thank you for calling doctors. Thank you for taking mommy to the doctor. Thank you for being there for daddy when the therapist came. Thank you for being around. It means so much because really the best care that we're going to give our parents, and I'm talking not only as a daughter but as a mother and a grandmother, I want to see my family united. So if they can be united, my care will be better also. The most important thing about collaborating with siblings for elderly care is being honest and judgment-free communication. It's so difficult. Just be prepared for different opinions, disagreements. You remember that you are all working for the same goal, a safe and healthy plan for your loved one. Do the best you can and don't judge anyone else. Do the best you can and don't judge anyone else. That's the words that I could tell you. Take home with you and remember. The demands of caregiving can be unpredictable. Any minute you could be called up to run to with Hatzalah with your parent to a hospital or to a doctor, or she's not feeling well or he's not feeling well. And sometimes some people are more flexible. They may be home more, they may be working from home more. But I'm just going to tell you one thing. It's not the women's job. It's not the daughters' jobs. It's the men as well. And there are a lot of men here, so I see that I'm talking to the right crowd. You are already doing that. But somehow it seems to fall naturally on the women in the family, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be for everyone to be part of it. And women are working these days. Not only are they working, they're also taking care of the family. They have 10 jobs that they're doing. So caregiver is just another part of it. Communicate openly. Listen to everyone. Listening is the best communication that anyone can do. Be honest. Be honest with yourself. Know your strengths as well. Know your own strengths, what you can do, and your limitations. We all have limitations. I remember once, I think it was last year when my mom was in the hospital, I told the nurse, if you need me to help you, I'll help you change, my mother. I know you need assistance. I said, never again. I said, what was I thinking? This is not for me. This is something I can never do again. Never. So you learn by experience sometimes what you can and cannot do. Be respectful. Treat yourself and your siblings with kindness and respect. You will only benefit from this because they will treat you the same way as well. Accept and forgive your siblings and forgive yourself. And I think that was something my granddaughter told me, Jacqueline. She said, you have to learn to forgive yourself. You're not going to be able to do every single thing that you think you can or hope that you can and say, it's okay. Do your best you can and say, I did it. I did it. I love who I'm taking care of. I love them. I want the best for them, and I'm there for them. Few things are more disorienting than also the shift from being cared by your parents to now you're caring for them. This transition is even made more difficult because it usually comes as a surprise or a shock. Hello, mom fell. Hello, dad just had a heart attack. It doesn't just come subtly, it's like wham, you're on call. You're on call, and you got to be there. Sometimes the biggest struggle is with your parents. Not only your siblings, but with your parents. How do you get your parents to use a cane? How do you get them to use a walker? How do you get them to go to a doctor? How do you get them to say okay to a therapist? How do you get them to say, okay, I'll get a driver? Why are you taking my license away? Why are you taking my independence away? You have to deal with this all the time. Do I have good answers for you? I really don't. It's so hard. It's so difficult. And that's the emotional drain that you feel because those are your parents. They took care of you. Now you have to reverse the roles and tell them, no, we have to take care of you. It's so hard. Our best move is to try and do less and not try to control everything in the situation. Yes, it may be dangerous, and you'll be there with them, and you'll ease them into the changes, but don't think that you can control everything, and certainly you can't demand control. Finances play an enormous role in how siblings choose to care for their aging parents, and the cost of senior living is overwhelming. The aides, the therapists, the doctors, it's all over the place. But I'm just going to tell you one thing. The most important thing is to never compromise on shalom, whatever that monetary price is. Do not compromise on shalom in your family. Take care of it. In the end, you will benefit way more than the money. So what do you do if you disagree, siblings disagree, you just cannot come to a compromise? That's when you turn to Bikor Halim. You tell them, do you have a social worker? Do you have a counselor? Do you have a rabbi that you could recommend that could help us with this? We just are at odds with each other, and you don't want to be at odds with each other. You want to have peace within the family. Go and look for someone to help mediate this. Look for someone who could help you. And again, you'll keep all the other things that I kept in mind, being respectful to each other, non-judgmental. You'll get someplace. You'll get someplace. Maybe it's not ideal, but it'll definitely be better than where you are now. How do you let go of the burden of taking care of your elderly parents, or feeling guilty that you feel burdened? You feel guilty because you feel burdened, or you feel guilty about everything. Like you didn't do enough, or you did too much, and now you're neglecting your family. Guilt. Jacqueline, right? Guilt. It's never ending. So in that respect, I also want to talk about self-care, and that's critical. Taking the time to care for yourself, nobody else could do that for you. You can't take care of another person if you are completely depleted of energy and emotionally drained. And I love the analogy of an airplane. And when the stewardesses that nobody listens to talks about, the safety measures, and you see the face mask coming down for the air, and they tell you, put it on yourself first. Put the mask on yourself first. You may have a little child who can't breathe also. If you cannot breathe, you can't help anyone. You have to take care and make sure that you could breathe so that you could take care of your loved ones. Talk to people. Talk to someone who gets it. Go to a caregiver support group. Speak to a therapist yourself. Speak to friends. Speak to family. Tell them what you're going through. They will understand. Try to live in the moment. Take a break from worrying about the future. You need these breaks. And we're going to make mistakes. Expect it. That's how we learn. You go through it. You don't know. It's scary. Making decisions for your parents medically or financially, it's very scary. You take a little step. You try it. You see if it works. If it doesn't work, you try another way. If it doesn't go this way, you try that way. You try a different doctor. You try a different hospital. We're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from them also. It's okay. It's normal. Try different solutions, and you'll find one that works. So going through all of this is going to change you. It will give you a new perspective, mental toughness, and a greater ability for compassion that few other challenges will bring in your life. And I wish everyone hatzlacha, and of course, refuah shalema for anyone who's not well.
You're talking to your family, you're talking with care and love, concern for whether it be every one of our parents and every one of our things, and that's who you care for all of us. Thank you so much. God bless you. I have to tell you, as my father got up in age, my brother and I made sure that he was in the office almost every single day. Whatever meeting I had, whether it be with the mayor of New York, congressman, or the president of Toys R Us, I always made sure that he was at those meetings, and I introduced him as the founder of the company and the one that created it all. And showing him that respect was key. So I said that to all of you, you always make sure that you show your parents the respect as the leader of the family, as the one that founded and made everything happen. As time went on, and this relates to something you said, that they can sometimes get difficult, we had to hire a driver for him because it was getting difficult for Sammy and I to drive him down. And I told the driver, he was this big Georgian, Russian type of guy, and I said, you know, my father may scream at you, go left, go right, go this, go there, you know, you're going to have patience. And he says to me, Mr. Shamie, you have to understand something. Someone like your father was a great man, is a great man, I shouldn't say was. He built your family, he built this business, he did everything. And it's very hard to go from being the person that did for everybody, whether being your family and the employees and everything, to being someone that needs to be taken care of. So it's important to have patience for realizing that these are the people that took care of us, that built it, that did everything. And you can't make them feel like they're needy. So I'm not the expert at this by any means, but hearing you and relating back to how we dealt with my father and all of it, how my mother stayed by his side every minute of the way. We have challenges, but those are mitzvot at the same time, and you'll feel great for all that you're doing, and you will continue to do. So God bless each one. My handshake goes out to each one of you for being here. I'd like the people from SBH to all stand up. Everybody, come on. Come on, there's all the volunteers. Excuse me, Michelle. These people are heroes. It's not. Everybody, you all do something. And the one name that I will mention is looking down at all of you and is very proud is Haber Shalom, Mr. Joseph Beta. He was my hero. He was someone that my mentor that I got to speak to him very often, and he's looking at the organization that he created. I mean, he didn't create it, but he recreated, and he built, and he did, and he had a new vision for it. You have taken the vision beyond. All the things that you do, all the sub-chapters that you do, all the caring that you do, it's professional, but it's all heart and all caring. So God bless each one of you for all that you do. Thank you. Questions? I think we want to wait. Have time for a few questions from the audience. Who has a question? Who wants to be the brave person to say something first? Go right ahead, come on.
Dory, does the power of attorney expire? Does that need to be renewed?
It doesn't expire by law, but banks take their own laws and rules into their own hand, and will say that if it's over 10 years that they may want a doctor's note, they may want something in addition to the power of attorney to make sure that it's still valid and active.
If they had Medicaid parents, do they need a secondary insurance? Well, I don't know who I'm
Medicaid, who can answer the question about Medicaid and secondary insurance?
So, I mean, it all depends. You know, you have Medicare as your primary, right? And then you can have supplemental insurance as the secondary, and then you can have Medicaid as your tertiary, your third. So it all depends on what you think your family member needs, because there are times that people will accept Medicare and supplemental, but not accept Medicaid. And sometimes you may want to keep the secondary insurance because of the specific care that you want, even though you also have Medicaid on top of it.
Okay, we have a question back here. Hi, yes, go ahead.
To Dory.
Oh boy, it's $2,000 an hour, by the way. I'll do the billing, I'll do the corrective.
Okay, so does the trust supersede the will?
Yes.
They have a will? It's still,
If it's set up in the right way, yes.
So
Correct.
it's still there, you don't get rid of the will?
They're two different tools and items, and the trust does one thing and the will would do something else. We want to avoid using a will. We want to avoid going through probate.
It's not enough to have.
So it's important to have a will, but it's something that we hopefully never want to use. If we have a trust, if we have other testamentary substitutes like a joint account or other beneficiary designated accounts, you can avoid ever using the will.
And also, could the person that owns the assets, they could be the executor of the
So
estate, the trust?
it depends on how you want to set up the trust. There are times where you can, times where you can't. It all depends on what you want the trust to do.
Dory wants to make one more comment.
I want to add an addendum to something that you said. So the healthcare proxy law was passed in New York State in 1990. But in 2010, there was a law that was passed that's called the Family Healthcare Decisions Act. This law changes the landscape because what it means is if, God forbid, a person doesn't have a healthcare proxy and there are multiple family members and they are not all on the same page, what this law does is create a hierarchy, a priority list of who has priority to make decisions for that individual. That may not be, the person that's higher up on the priority list may not be the one that would be making decisions in alignment with that loved one. Very, very important. You don't need a lawyer to fill out a healthcare proxy. You just need to have it witnessed. But the healthcare proxy law has other things attached to it. So please, it's really